Welcome to the Library Connection. I'm Tracy Thomas, Director at the B.B. Comer Library, and I want to thank you so much for being with us today. I also want to thank TV 47 so much for allowing us to do this show for so many years, because it gives us a great connection, hence the name, with our community, to not just showcase what we're doing at the library, but to also showcase individuals and programs and services that are happening right here in our community that tie in so closely to what we do at the library. So thank you again to TV 47, and thank you for being with us. Today we've got a great program. Today we have Mr. Buster Hughes with us, and he is the Program Director for Grief Share, which is a grief, it's kind of grief therapy. Would you call it therapy?
Grief counseling, grief therapy.
Counseling.
Yeah.
So, and you do that at First Assembly.
I do at Sylacauga First Assembly out in Oak Grove.
And today we're going to be talking about his program, because there are some books that go along with this. And so I met Mr. Hughes just a few weeks ago when I did a program for the Kiwanis Club. And after the program was over with, he came up and he mentioned his program to me. And we made a couple of common connections. And we've talked about this, but grief just kind of bonds people. And when you know somebody has experienced a loss, it just kind of bonds you with people. And he said, well, I'll tell you about a real good book. He emailed me, I'll tell you about this really good book. And it's called What Grieving People Wish You Knew About What Really Helps and What Really Hurts. It's by Nancy Guthrie. And so I went back and I ordered this. And I'll tell you, I'm skeptical about books sometimes, but and we'll talk a little bit more about this one in a minute. But this one kind of, it is a great book.
It is a great book, Tracy, on what to say to grieving people, and I didn't know before I went through grief. I didn't know what to say, and sometimes we say things that hurt and don't realize it.
Absolutely. Well, then let's talk just a minute about your story and what led you to research how to deal with grief.
Okay, Tracy. My wife Diane and I were married for 44 years, and we found out in May of 2013 that she had stage 4 cancer. And she lived for 2 years, and May 17th, 2015, she passed away. Long about the end of July, I knew that I needed some help. I mean, I was crying every day, and I just needed some help. So I asked my pastor. We had a new pastor at that time, and he was from the Shelby County area, and he said, I said, I need some help. Do you know of any grief programs? And he said, my father-in-law is a pastor on staff at Kingwood Church in Alabaster. And he said, they have a grief program. And he said, let me give you his number and you call him. And so I did, and the lady over the program there, Miss Connie, she got back with me, and she said, we have a program starting, a new 13-week program starting in 2 weeks. And so I did go to that program, and the first night that I went to the program, I was there about probably 30 minutes, and I knew that that's where I should be. And that night, also, the Lord called me to do one at our church, because I didn't know of any Grief Share program that was in this area, and Grief Share is a great program. So I continued to go up there to that grief program in Alabaster at Kingwood Church for the duration of 13 weeks. But on the 6th week, I had gone to our board, which I was on the board at that time at church, and our pastor, and I told him what I wanted to do. And a lot of these programs, they charge for the books or registration fee or something like that. And so I go to our board and I said, look, the Lord's called me to do this. And I said, guys, he's called me to do this, and he wants the church to pay for this as an outreach of our church. And of course they unanimously agreed, anything you need. And so this program is absolutely free. But this program helped me so much, Tracy. It's just the things, I know we're going to get into this a little bit later in the program, but there's so many things that's associated with grief that I didn't know until I started through it myself. And so this program is a tremendous program. And like I said, I know we're going to get into the program itself in a little while, but it's a tremendous program. And actually, the book that you mentioned there a few minutes ago, by Nancy Guthrie. Her and her husband David are the host of Grief Share on all the videos.
I read that, and you know, I'll talk a little bit more about this book later. But one of the things that I loved about the book so much is because, you know, when we know that somebody's grieving, we encounter somebody that's had a loss, we immediately want to do something to help. We want to say something. We want to go to them. We want to help them. But oftentimes we're so uncomfortable that we allow that to keep us back for being afraid that we're going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. And I know I have a wonderful friend, one of the closest friends I have, and we were pregnant at the same time. And they lost their baby, and so they had a service, and I didn't go because in my mind I thought, if she sees me expecting, it's going to really upset her, and I don't want to make her grief any worse. And then later when I realized I probably made her grief worse by not going and supporting her. And so I've learned a lot, but this book had some really good things in it like that, about when we let our fear to stay away from somebody actually end up doing more harm.
Right, it really does, because you know, people want to, they want you to mention. That's something that people don't understand. Let me say first of all, Tracy, that everyone wants to help. They're really trying to help us, and I know that, but they really don't know how sometimes. But I like to hear people say my wife's name. I like to, you know, I like for them to mention Diane's name. Before we came on this morning, I told you that I visited her grave yesterday, and your son Jackson is buried just 3 graves up, and I mentioned, you know, Jackson by name, because that really helps.
It does.
You know, it really helps, and don't just say your wife or your husband or your mother or, you know, your father, but call their name, and that really helps people.
It does, and I think, you know, people forget that when they leave the funeral home and it's over with and they walk away and go home, then we're left by ourselves. And so that's one of the things I really liked about this in particular. This book is not just for it's not just for the person who is trying to help somebody get through grief, because that's really the angle that it's written, is for this is what you can do if you're trying to help somebody. But what I enjoyed reading this was all of those things that people say to us thinking that they're good things to say, and we'll get into some of those in a few minutes. And they really hurt you more than they help you. But it gives you some kind of base for saying, okay, now I understand why they said that. You know, it helps you understand a little bit more why they came at you and said what they did. And so when I was reading this, I thought, okay, so that's why they said that. They really thought that would help me. But it's a great book, and we're going to talk some more about this when we come back. I wanted you to share your story first, and then when we come back, we're going to talk more about the Grief Share program.
Hi, it's Shawnee McNeil at South First Bank. This is a great time for you to buy or build a new home, or maybe refinance your present mortgage. Our rates are the lowest they've been in years, and that means saving you money. We've been helping our customers become homeowners in this area for nearly 70 years, and we can make our approvals right here in the office, and that means saving you time. We're located here in downtown Sylacauga. Come in and find South First, a better way to bank.
Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Marble City Pharmacy in Sylacauga is your destination for the highest quality health care. Our knowledgeable pharmacists are always available for questions about your medications or advice on taking over-the-counter products and supplements. Our friendly staff can assist you in choosing from our full lines of compression hose and medical equipment. And don't forget our gift department. We have a great selection of unique gifts for every occasion. Stop by and see us today. Marble City Pharmacy, here for life.
Not getting a good night's sleep? Come into King's Mattress Outlet in Sylacauga and let us help you get that good night's sleep you deserve. We carry the best quality mattresses at the best prices from Restonic, King Cole, and Park Place. Eurotop Queen mattresses start at $199. Check out our Restonic Cabot Eurotop mattress with 1,000 individually pocketed coils, marvelous middle for back support, and comfort gel memory foam. King's Mattress Outlet in Sylacauga. Best quality at the best prices.
Welcome back to the Library Connection. I'm Tracy Thomas, and today we're talking with Buster Hughes, and he is the program director for Grief Share. And we've been talking the first segment about, about what led you to investigate this program and to bring this program to Sylacauga. And so let's talk now about the actual format of the program, what it's like, because I know you've mentioned that it's 13 sessions. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about when somebody comes the first time, how long are the sessions?
Okay, Tracy, it is 13 weeks, and then after the 13 weeks, we have it on Thursday night, and after the 13 weeks, we do a celebration dinner. I bring in dinner for everyone that night, and but the sessions are from 6:30 to 8 o'clock p.m. It's on Thursday night, and I started it on Thursday night because I was going to Alabaster to the program I mentioned earlier, going through Grief Share program there on Tuesday night, so I started ours on Thursday night. And what we do is we come in from 6:30 until 6:45. We have a meet and greet time, and we have refreshments. And then we move down at 6:45, we move to a classroom, and we'll watch a video, which is 40 to 45 minutes. And the video is Christian counselors, pastors, psychologists, and people that's gone through grief just like we have. And there are some special guests on those videos, Zig Ziglar and Joni Eareckson Tada and a few others on there. And then after the video, we talk. And we always say in Grief Share, Grief Share is just a safe place to talk. Because you're there in a room with people that have gone through grief just like you have. And anyone, as far as the people that can come to the program, it's anyone that's suffered a loss through death. It can be a child, a spouse, a sibling, a mother, father, grandfather, grandchild. It doesn't matter.
So it would be appropriate if somebody had not been the person that experienced the direct loss, but maybe they were looking to help somebody that they felt like needed some help.
Yes, and I've had a few people come in too, and I know a lady on our last, I think it was last year, she came in, she worked with hospice, and she had recommended a few people to our program, and I had her come in and just observe a program, and of course you're welcome to do that sometime too, and just see what it is.
So I know you've got some of the topics for some of the programs. Let's look at just a couple of those topics and tell us about what some of the things are.
Okay. Well, number one, the first video is called "Is This Normal?" I think that was so good because when I first, my wife passed away, Diane passed away, I really thought I was going crazy. Mm-hmm. I told someone yesterday, I said, I would, all of a sudden I would be out in the yard, I would be back in our bedroom, and what I was thinking, well, what am I doing here? What did I do this for? What did I come out here for? So is this normal? Let you know you're not going crazy, okay? That we all experience that when we're going through grief. Number two is the challenges of grief, a lot of things that you will be facing that you haven't ever been through in life. I mean, it's different, and you and I talked a little bit before the program started, Tracy, but there is a difference, and everybody handles grief differently.
Absolutely.
But there's a difference from, say, a close friend passing away to a child or a spouse or a mother or father passing away. It is different. The journey of grief, part one, a lot of things, and part two, a lot of things you go through. And grief and your relationships, especially when you lose a spouse, relationships change. A lot of times couples, that you were real close friends with, now suddenly are not your close friends. That happens, and that was just because I guess for several reasons. They tell you in the Grief Share videos. One is that person that was a friend, also your spouse, is not there anymore, and it's an awkward time because you've got 3 instead of 4.
the dynamic that all your relationships are built on suddenly changes.
Suddenly changes, and that was a little hard at first.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I want to mention about what you said, you just said, that everybody grieves differently, and that is certainly one thing that we found out, because when Jackson was born and we knew that he was terminally ill, people would come up and they would say, oh, I know you know how I feel. I had a child that was sick, or I lost.
Yeah.
And one day my cousin, who had a child killed in a car wreck, said, you know what, Tracy, I don't, because I said to her after he passed, I know you know how I feel. And she said, no, I really don't, because your dynamic was different than mine. Mine was a grown child who had
Right.
already left home.
Right.
And I loved her as much as you loved yours, but the dynamic was different. Your child was in your lap 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and he was part of your household.
Right.
So that whole dynamic makes it a little bit different type of grief.
It does. It does, and it's really according to how close, and we don't know how close a person is. I know there's one lady on one of the videos, Grief Share videos, and her aunt died, and she was really, really having a hard time, but she was just really close, to this aunt. So we don't know the relationship that a person has when they lose a loved one. We don't know how close their relationship was. I had a lady just a couple of weeks ago that I went to high school with, and her husband passed away. And when I got up to visiting at the funeral home, when I got up to her, I hugged her, and she said, I said, I'm praying for you. And she said, well, you know what I'm going through. And I said, well, I know grief.
That's a good answer too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, one thing I want to ask you before we go to break is, if somebody just wants to, like you said, want to just come check the program out and see what it was, what if they really want to do the series, but they know there's some dates in there they're going to have to miss? Will they still be on the same page with everybody else? Or?
Yes, Tracy. This series is every week. It's an open series. Every week, all 13 weeks are a different part of grief. So if they have to miss a few weeks, and to be honest, I rarely have someone that comes the whole time, for all 13 weeks. But what you can do is you can come back the next session, and you can pick up the ones you missed, or go through the entire program again.
Okay. All right. Well, we are going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get into some of the things in this book, some of the tips that it talks about, and some of the ways that you can help somebody if you know somebody that's grieving.
As a designated Champ City, Sylacauga is dedicated to being sure that every child has a healthy meal.
Join us in spreading the word that healthy meals are available to children 18 and under as a part of Get Healthy Talladega County's after school and summer meals program.
Remember, every meal matters. So get up and get moving.
Get healthy, Sylacauga. Get healthy, Talladega County.
It all starts with you.
Marble City Pharmacy in Sylacauga is your destination for the highest quality health care. Our knowledgeable pharmacists are always available for questions about your medications or advice on taking over-the-counter products and supplements. Our friendly staff can assist you in choosing from our full lines of compression hose and medical equipment. And don't forget our gift department. We have a great selection of unique gifts for every occasion. Stop by and see us today. Marble City Pharmacy, here for life.
Hi, it's Shawnee McNeil at South First Bank. This is a great time for you to buy or build a new home, or maybe refinance your present mortgage. Our rates are the lowest they've been in years, and that means saving you money. We've been helping our customers become homeowners in this area for nearly 70 years, and we can make our approvals right here in the office, and that means saving you time. We're located here in downtown Sylacauga. Come in and find South First, a better way to bank.
Member FDIC, an equal housing lender.
Welcome back to Library Connection. I'm Tracy Thomas. Today we're talking with Buster Hughes, and he's the program director for Grief Share. And we've been talking about the program and about your story, what led you to search this out and bring this to Sylacauga. And then we've talked about the program, the structure of it. Tell us one more time what night y'all meet.
We meet on Thursday night, and the program begins, the next 13-week session begins, I don't think we mentioned that, Tracy, on August 16th. And it's from 6:30 till 8, Sylacauga First Assembly, and we're out on the hill at Oak Grove.
Do they need to bring any money? Do they need to register?
No, they don't need to bring any money or register. Just show up. The program is absolutely free, and it is an outreach of our church, and it doesn't cost anything to go through the program.
What a wonderful program. I want to mention this book that you suggested for me to read, and you went back to work and you emailed me later and you said, hey, this is a really good book, you might want to just check this out. But I will say again, the title of it, in case you're interested, is What Grieving People Wish You Knew About What Really Helps and What Really Hurts. It's by Nancy Guthrie. And so I told you when I'm reading a nonfiction book, I tend to just jump right into the meat of the book instead of reading through the introduction, and I just kind of scan it and see. And so this weekend I was sitting there looking through the book, and I thought, let me just read the introduction, because I want to know how she got the idea for this format. Because what she did was she actually went online and did some surveys and just asked people to answer these questions. You know, if you're grieving, what did people do for you that helped? What did people say or do that really was not helpful? And she compiled those answers in this book. And so I just kept thinking, some of these are just so good, because people would say, you know, when they came to our house, they didn't just bring food for us, they brought food for our pets too. Or they came and they got my pets and took my pets off my hands for a few days so I could take care of things. Or, you know, and for us, I know when our son Jackson passed away, people came to our house and they took our son Taylor out to the movies, or took him out to eat, or brought things to the house for him so that he knew he wasn't an afterthought. And so I just love the suggestions that are in here. But what really got me was the disorder that our son Jackson had was very rare. It was a peroxisome disorder. And, you know, there are about less than 100 children in the world living with what he had. And so there's a sister disorder called Zellweger syndrome that a lot of people have never heard of, because it's extraordinarily rare too. And we share the same scientific community. So we just got home from Washington, D.C., going to a Zellweger's conference to meet their researchers. And when I picked the book up and I read through the introduction, the author has lost 2 children to Zellweger syndrome. So I made an immediate connection with it, and that maybe that's why everything she was saying registered so with me, because she had actually lived through it. And one of the things that she said that I thought was so profound was, after my children died, I was on a high for a little while, thinking about what a gift they were and how much I learned from the experience of having them, and so grateful for the experience of having these children in my life. And that's kind of the way we did with Jackson too. After he passed, we were just so grateful that God gave us the experience with him and that we learned so much. But then you have this rock that lands on your chest, and all of the positives that you found or that you recognize turn into this really heavy weight that you're carrying, and it's grief.
It is.
It is. And so this book was fantastic, and I shared that with you this morning, and I think that was a little God wink to recommend this book to me, because it's actually helped me very much too.
Good.
There are some things that you can do to help people when they're grieving, and I know you've got a few pointers. Let's talk about some of those.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned there one thing was you had some friends come and take your other son and go and do something with them. Okay, so that's really good. Another thing you mentioned was people bringing food. Sometimes it's really good, and people that are grieving really appreciate the fact that if you not only bring them food, but you eat with them, bring enough and eat with them too, to sit down and talk. Because we mentioned earlier too, Tracy, that oftentimes when after the funeral, you know, after the visitation, the funeral and everything, after a few days, when you lose someone, everyone goes back to their normal life, and it's tough. So, but the things that really help, I know they mentioned this on some of the Grief Share videos, is that you know, this one lady said she had never cut grass before, and her husband passed away, and she didn't know what she was going to do, and she said, God, would you just send someone to cut my grass? And the next Sunday morning at church, this young man came up and said, I know you lost your husband, and I love to cut grass, and by the way, could I come and cut your grass? And she said, you know, it was such a help. So there's so many things we can, you know, we can ask people, what can I do for you? We have a tendency, and I did before I went through grief, started going through grief, and we have a tendency to say, well, if you need anything, just call me. And grieving people are not going to call you most of the time. You know, so it's good to come back and say, hey, notice and observe things and say, can I come and help you with maybe some of your paperwork, get things straightened out for you? I'm pretty good at that. Or can I come and cut your grass? Or can I come and wash your vehicle or take your vehicle to the mechanic for you and have it checked? Is there anything I can do? So that's a lot of good suggestions of things that we can do, because people going through grief usually won't ask.
And those things, like the routine things, like taking your car to the mechanic or coming and taking your pets off your hands for a few days, some of those things are things that seem so routine and so mundane, but when you're grieving, you really can't think clearly enough to even follow through with those routine things. So those are things that help a lot. And I made myself some notes of things that people did for us. And the morning of the funeral, our doorbell rang really early that morning, and I, couldn't sleep, so I was laying on the couch and just trying to figure out how we were going to get through the day. And opened my front door, and there was a basket sitting on the front steps, and it was one of our sweet neighbors had made breakfast and had muffins and everything we needed in that basket just to sit down and eat together before we got started with all that the day was going to hold for us. And so that was just something that was really special to us. And that didn't require any interaction. It was not awkward. She didn't even have to say anything. She just set it on the steps, rang the doorbell, and ran. So there are things that you can do. And then one other thing was that I had some family members that came to the house and said, you know what, we're just going to stay here and answer your telephone today. And anybody calls, we're just going to tell them what time they can bring food. We're going to tell them what you need, and you won't have to interact with people. And so sometimes having a buffer like that is good.
That's good. Yeah,
now, I want to talk with you about one more thing, because we've just got a couple of minutes before we're out of time. But I want to talk about something in this book that I thought was important to mention, and that is what social media has done to people who are grieving. That a lot of times we know that people who are grieving, like you said, they won't reach out to other people. Maybe they're not going to leave their house, maybe they're not going to get out. But social media gives them a way that they can post something online, and it's almost like a plea for help.
It is.
And just say, hey, I'm really struggling today, I need some help. And that without even having to interact, you can like their comment.
Yeah, and it's not always that someone needs you to come and to do things physically for them. Tracy, it's as you know, sometimes it's just a phone call. Sometimes it's just to come by and say, look, I know grief. I don't know exactly what you're going through, because I haven't lost a child or a spouse or a mother or father, but I know grief. And I would like to be available to you anytime you want to talk. And if you want to cry in front of me, it's okay. It's okay. Because I think we feel awkward sometimes when we cry. I've cried in Walmart, and I've cried at work, and a lot of places. But sometimes people feel awkward when we cry. And so it's people really that are going through grief really love for you to say, hey, it's okay.
It's okay.
And ask them about that loved one that passed away, and listen.
Well, we are almost out of time, but I want to thank you so much for coming.
Thank
and it's
you
a
for
great
inviting me.
program. And how can they get in touch with you? Can you give a number real quick?
Yes, they can get in touch with me. Just call our church, and they will give you any information that you need. It's 256-249-2461.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hughes, and thank you